Hi guys, welcome back. Jay here from borntoproduce.com and welcome to lesson 3. In this lesson we're going to be doing something a bit more interesting and we're going to be adding a bass line, which is super important in deep house music. As I kind of touched upon in the first lesson, this has to be right. I mean, this just has to be right. The sound and the groove and the rhythm, so important. So when you're selecting bass sounds and playing around with bass melodies, trying to get that hook, then try to imagine yourself in the club. Try to imagine the bass in the club and what gets you dancing when you go to clubs. Does it get your head bopping? You've come up with a hook, but close your eyes, and what I do is I imagine being in the club and listening to that track. And I try to be honest with myself and say, look, is this really going to get people dancing? And more often than not, I say no, and I go back to start again with a different melody or a different sound, whatever. So be honest with yourselves when you come up with a hook. There's absolutely no shame, and it happens to me so many times that you probably need to go back through and do 10, 20 attempts of a slightly different groove, slightly different notes, different bass sound. That's extremely important. You might want to layer it up with something, and it can take several days, but it's worth it. It's better than continuing with an idea that is not really ever going to work. And it doesn't matter how much you polish it, doesn't matter what effects you add to it, it still sounds crap. The bass melody here that I'm about to program in was definitely not my first attempt, not by a long shot. We just edit out most of the attempts on here, otherwise it becomes so boring for you, the viewers, watching us do attempt after attempt after attempt and changing notes here and there. It's just really tedious. A little bit of background about the sound that I chose. I actually went with a sound from Avenger. Don't worry, you don't need Avenger to carry on with this tutorial. I've tweaked one of the presets in there and I've made it my own, and I've sampled it so you can bring it into the Cubase sampler or Groove Agent, whatever. And obviously I'm going to be showing you how to do that. I did have a little go trying to remake this sound with just Cubase plugins, so I tried Retrolog, got sort of close to the sound, and I got slightly closer to the sound with Halion using the Flux part of Halion, which is wavetable orientated, which is obviously going to sound a bit more like Avenger. And I used the Dancer preset and then started to tweak it. And yes, it was getting close, but it just didn't have the same energy and impact as the one that I had from the outset, so I went back to that one. Okay, so without further ado, let's get this sound into the sampler and get the bass line down. You'll go to your file browser and go to your work files, of course, as you've done before. I'm going to go to my audio pool. And just before to do that, I'm just going to create a sampler track. I'm going to right click, add sampler track. I'm going to call this bass. And now I'm just going to drag it in there. You can go to your file browser and right click and create sampler track that way. So I'm going to drag that in there. And what I've done here is actually sampled each of the notes, but I'm only going to use the first note. Let's just have a listen anyway. So what I'm going to do is just set the start and end point. So the start is okay, but I'm going to bring the end point over. I just sampled them all, so just in case we need it later on, or whether you want to use them later on. But I'm just going to use the very first note and then just play that first note over the keyboard. And now to program in the riff which I came up with. So basically on my keyboard now I should be able to play this. Yeah, I am. So on my MIDI keyboard that's attached to this sampler track, I can now trigger this note up and down the keys, just like I can do with my mouse here. Also just making sure that the one shot button is off, so it won't play the whole sample regardless. It will actually look at my MIDI notes and see the length of the MIDI notes as to how much of this sample to play. If I have one shot on, for example, and just to demonstrate this, and I press a key, I literally pressed that key down very quickly and it played all of that. Whereas if I put one shot off, it only plays how long I keep the key down for. So I just wanted to show you that as well. So let's put that in there. Alright, just going to program this in. Okay, so I've programmed in the riff. I'll just leave it on the screen there in case you want to copy it. So it starts on the second beat actually, so just play it for you. and just vary the length slightly just to play more or less of that sample. And you can also adjust the sort of length here as well. Let's just duplicate that across. So come down to there, let's put the snap on. Duplicate that across, Control D. And let's just mess around with this. So you can affect the sort of release or the length of the sample here. You can also do it here if you come to the ADSR, the envelope basically. So you get a much sort of shorter note, staccato. So obviously mix that to taste as per normal. Now also going to do something slightly unusual, is add a little reverb to this. Most bass lines do not have reverb because it tends to make it a bit muddy. Quickly colour this something green or something. Yeah, so it just tends to be a bit muddy, but I'm going to break the rules slightly and send this off to a very short reverb. So let's go to medium. And obviously you don't want much of this. Let's just have a listen to it. Let's just solo it. And what we're also going to be doing in later lessons is automating this. So as the riff gets more towards the end of the riff, we'll increase the reverb. So it goes something like this. And we'll also pump that with sidechain and make that interesting as well. And I'm just going to take off that last note, just so we've got a bit of an ending. Yeah. But we'll do the automation in a later lesson. Let's just put a small amount of reverb on just to thicken this bass sound out a bit. And don't forget again, we're just mixing the copy of this dry signal with the 100% wet signal on the bus. And just do it before and after. No reverb. There you go, it just thickens it out a little bit. Let's just play it all together to see what we've got so far. Let's just EQ out a tiny bit of the bottom end just so it doesn't conflict with our kick drum. Let's just show you that now. Just go up to kick and we'll have a look at the frequencies. So the kick is residing around 45 to 50 Hertz. So we want to sort of EQ that out of the bass so the kick comes through a little bit better. It's got a bit more room to breathe. So bass, steep slope, come to 48 with the right click. And we're just going to take out 60 Hertz and below. Again, very, very importantly, not to affect the sound of the bass. Like that. Again, so we're just dropping the bass frequencies around about the 50 Hertz mark, just so that kick comes through a little bit better. Let's have a listen. In fact, let's just do kick and bass together. Yeah, that's okay for now. We're also going to be side chaining that as well for the same reason. So we'll dip the bass and some other instruments as well. every time the kick plays, so that will also create some space as well for the kick. Okay guys, I think that's enough for lesson 3. I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.